Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salaila Makudir. The time is 9:45 a.m. Central African time, and we're going to be switching gears now and heading over to Sydney, Australia, where tens of thousands, possibly hundreds of thousands, marched across the Sydney Harbour Bridge in pouring rain this past Sunday. Pots and pans in hand, they beat the sound of resistance across the city skyline, demanding an end to the siege on Gaza and a global reckoning for those complicit in the genocide. This was the March for Humanity, and among them, it was families, it was elders, it was young people, and even WikiLeaks Julian Assange was part of it. And all of them were calling with one voice, cease fire now. And this morning we go deeper into what this global show for solidarity means, especially for us here at home in South Africa. Earlier in the show, we had South African storyteller and content creator Refilo Mofokeng reminding us that activism isn't reserved for the streets. She said no to a brand deal tied to Israel's war machine and using her platform not for profit but for Palestinian liberation. Now we turn our attention to the global resistance in motion, and we're going to having that very, very important conversation with Wasim El-Haj. He's an Australian-Palestinian. He's a son of a Nakba survivor, and is a vocal pro-Palestine advocate in Sydney, and is joining us on our virtual platform to talk about, I think, that very, very big protest that we saw over the weekend in Australia. Wasim, thank you so much for joining us from Australia. I know it's very early for you in the morning, but we really appreciate you giving us your time.
It's actually the evening. Salaam alaikum. Thank you for having me on.
Yes,
it's not time.
Yes. Can you take us back to Sunday? You marched across the Harbour Bridge this past weekend. Can you describe that moment for us? What did it feel like to be part of this sea of resistance in Sydney, spreading a very, very powerful message on Palestine?
Look, the number of people that attended was, beyond what was expected. It was a delight to see the humanity. All people, as you described, all ages, ethnic backgrounds, religions, with the exception of Zionists as an ideology, were in attendance at this rally, and it was a unifying moment. The Sydney Harbour Bridge, just for your own interest, knowledge is was built and open. It was opened in 1932 during the Great Depression as a symbol of hope and unity, connecting the north and south of the city. And it was once again on Sunday symbol of hope for humanity, hope for Gaza, hope for the Palestinians and for Palestine, and a unifying structure, symbol, unifying our city, our nation, and also our humanity across borders. We are united with you, and you with us, and we are united with the people of Gaza. So the feeling was both a sadness for what is happening, and that we have to go out and protest and say, stop starving children, and call on our elected leaders to represent us and sanction Israel. But at the same time, for me as a Palestinian, born and raised in Australia, whose father's still alive, and is a Nakba survivor from Haifa, seeing the amount of people and the support, it was pleasing to see that people care. That they're not just apathetic like our leaders seem to be.
And I think that's very, very important. One thing that's really standing out for me is the fact that it's not a secret that Australia has long stood by Western powers, but we're starting to see, this shift that is happening across the Western world, where dozens of countries are edging closer to recognizing the state of Palestine. What do you think has pushed the needle in this aspect?
I think the needle has not been pushed far enough yet. What you describe is correct. There is this kind of bond of Western colonial powers to support colonial structures, but you can't deny what we're seeing in Gaza. No one can see what is happening in Gaza and say, oh, just put it on the side and we'll keep going. No, the people demand that we be heard. And that's across the world. And you see the structures of repression from these powers, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in Canada, whether it's here. I've been forced out of my job for being a Palestinian Marama Kafir in the New South Wales Department of Education. So there are these oppressive powers, but it's not working. The people just don't accept genocide. And that's to the credit of the people. It's to the credit of the people that we say, hold on, you are elected to represent us. Are you a minister for New South Wales or Sydney, or are you a minister for Tel Aviv? So I think that's what's pushing the change. These politicians and these elected representatives being called out by their constituents and saying, well, you're not representing us, so we will keep demonstrating. We will keep coming up to your offices and speaking up. We will keep writing in letters and emails. We will keep demonstrating and be heard. And we refuse to be ignored. And after 21 months, you saw the footage. You described it as tens of thousands, which the police have reported. But I'll tell you, I've been to these protests. I've only missed a handful during the past 21 months. And it's unfortunate we're still going because the situation hasn't improved. It's actually gotten worse in Gaza. But they would report a fraction of what was always there. And when I was there assisting with marshalling on Sunday, and the people were just amounts, you can't describe. The police officer behind me, when I asked her what she thought, she said, I don't know how many, hundreds of thousands. And the organizers have estimated 300,000, up to 300,000. So it was immense. And I think that mass of people in the rain, it tells the politician, hold on, I'm going to lose my vote. I'm going to lose my seat. I better actually say something. But it's not pushed far enough yet, this needle, because what they want to recognize is a Palestine that has no authority. And they haven't said they'll recognize, they haven't said they're going to recognize it yet. In Australia, they haven't said they will recognize it, by a certain time, which, France has. But they want to demilitarize Palestine that is subservient to another colonial state. That's not a country that is recognized.
From your perspective, I think you pointed out on something very, very important. The fact that months into this genocide, people are still showing up in their numbers. When it comes to the protests that have been staged. From your perspective, what's keeping the momentum going? Is it grief? Is it rage? Is it solidarity, or maybe just something else that you can't put your finger to?
Look, I have to, in Sydney, I have to congratulate the Palestine Action Group who have organised these rallies time and time again. From the very start, we've faced opposition. The group has faced opposition, but we as a people in Sydney have faced opposition from our leader, our Premier, Chris Minns, who even today, I'll get to this later, but, has tried to suggest that they'll introduce laws to prevent such a protest again. But I think what's got people coming out, and so many people came out for the first time. I had so many people tell me that it was their first time coming on Sunday. It's humanity. It's this fitra, we have it in Arabic, fitra. It's that innate inclination. We have this innate inclination in us. When we see a child being starved to death, it's our innate nature to say, well, no, we don't accept that. We reject that. That's not right. You don't need someone to teach you that that's wrong, right? It's in our innate nature. And the innate nature of the humankind, of humans, is to incline towards justice. That is what we incline towards. Sure, people do unjust things, but the majority of people do not incline towards that. They have a stand for peace, a stand for justice. We seek that. We seek peace. We seek justice. We seek, for people to live in harmony. That is just a nature that we have within us. And whether you're living in a society that's, exposed to this, or if you're isolated, let's just hypothetically say you're isolated somewhere and you haven't heard, as soon as you hear of what's happening, your nature will reject it. And I think that's what drives the people out and saying, well, for some people it's grief, yes, because they have relatives, my brother-in-laws, their families in Gaza. Then you've got the people who are in anger because their government's ignoring them. And Australia, in the past month alone, has sent parts of F-35 jets, it's been reported, to Israel. For what purpose? Other than to kill innocent people. So that anger for some people is there. And for others, it's compassion. It's compassion that we are humans. There's the mothers, the families for Palestine who come out. And there's the Holocaust survivors who have, or children of Holocaust survivors who have come out because they know what's happened. And they say, not in our name. And so it's different for different people, but altogether, it's what I'm describing is a common humanity. All these different facets are facets of emotion, describing what we are as humans. We are not just vessels of physical substance. of blood and water and so on. We have a soul, we have emotions, we have feelings, and we stand with other humans. We don't even need to know them. We don't even need to know what their names are. We just need to know that someone is being oppressed, and we stand up against that oppression.
Mm, mm, very, very important. Let's talk about Canberra. How is the Australian government and authorities responded to these protests, but this particular one, which I think sent a very, very strong message?
Look, I think their response is disappointing, as it has been for 21 months. And that's why I say the needle has not ticked enough for these people to stop their support of colonial enterprise in the occupying Zionist entity. And the occupying Zionist entity, let's just make that clear, has been from its day dot, has been operating from what was initially terror groups of the Haganah and Irgun, which then formed the Israeli government, so-called. And from then, they've supported ambitions such as, apartheid South Africa. Did you know, Anthony Lowenstein recently in his book and documentary, which you can find the documentary on YouTube, I believe. He recently said that Israel supplied apartheid South Africa with white phosphorus shells in 1976, I think it was at the time, when Israel was so-called Israel was under 30 years of age, and it was funneling that into this supremacist ideology in the state. So it's from early on. So our government has not shifted enough. It has not acted enough. As I said, past month, reported that Australia has sent parts of F-35 jets to so-called Israel. We have our Premier of New South Wales receiving, he congratulated Israel on its birthday in May this year, and then he's received a letter of thanks. It's supported from through the ambassador, from the President of Israel. Our Premier, our leader of our state here in New South Wales, has received a letter of thanks, just get it clear, from the President of Israel during a genocide for his unwavering support. So that tells you where their allegiance is. And the question is why? Our Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, is on record and in films and videos for being a pro-Palestinian protester from decades past. What shifted and why? So the response in this particular moment, well, today, the Premier of New South Wales, I believe he said that he's seeking to identify if they can legislate to prevent such protests in the future. Okay, instead of hearing the people, we as citizens, as members of this state, en masse in the rain, have gone and made ourselves heard and united and come together for humanity. And our Premier has said he seeks to legislate to prevent such protests on the bridge. That's a shame. That is a real shame. Our Australian Prime Minister, we're calling for sanctions on the Zionist entity. We haven't had those. So if they were genuine representatives of their constituents, and also what I would consider people with innate nature that is stable, then I would say that they would probably say, well, no, we can't support genocide. We can't be starving people to death. We can't support that. Let's stop sending these parts of F-35 jets. Let's stop factories from being allowed to send. Let's do what South Africa's done. Let's look at who has served in those so-called, terror forces and has come back into Australia, and identify, have they committed any war crimes? That's what we'd be seeking as a natural response. We'd say, well done to these protesters for standing up for humanity. We encourage these protesters to continue in making their voice heard, and the government would hear its people and say, we will represent them because we are elected to represent them. But that's not the response we got today. The response we got today was, I would say, disappointing. And it's a continuation of disappointment. And we will continue to speak up because it is the right thing to do. And regardless of perceived repercussions, it's the right thing to do. And if this was, people, I remember going to school here and, learning history in year 10 and year 9 in secondary school, and we would hear about World War II. And I used to think, how could people be so, dumb that they would allow such a thing to happen? And then I'm living now in this reality where Palestinians are targeted, not just, they're targeted in Gaza, in the West Bank, across the entirety of Palestine in 1948. And then even here, where Palestinians are being forced out of their jobs, where, censorship exists. And that is not That is not what we want to see. That is not what we expect from our politicians when they represent us, to just ignore us and say, oh, we're going to stop people from talking about this, and we're going to criminalize, like the UK is trying to do, criminalize criticism of the Zionist entity. Well, that's just not on, and it won't work, because the people care for humanity. It's our natural inclination that is not possible to defeat. You can try to suppress it, for a period of time. You can try to crush it for a period of time, but it will always come up, because it is within us as a collective, and it needs no instruction, and it's across the world. As you see, you're contacting me from South Africa. We are in harmony because it is innate within us.
Most definitely, and we're going to end it on that powerful note. Wasim, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you giving us the time, and it was very, very inspiring from South Africa, looking at Sydney and those numbers. It was, a sight to behold. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Leo. Thank you.
There you go, Wasim. Walaikum salam, coming to us live from Sydney, Australia there, and giving us insight on that powerful protest on Sunday at the Harbour Bridge in Australia. And I think it sent quite a strong message. I think, a lot of us have been feeling quite tired, quite fatigued, feeling hopeless when it comes to the Palestine discourse and what we can do around it to better the situation. And months and months and even a few years since this siege, since this genocide has started, seeing those kind of numbers, seeing people not being discouraged, still go out to the streets and put pressure on their governments to do something against Israel. I think it's really, really inspiring, and it's very, very important that as South Africans, or anywhere that you are in the world, to take note from the actions of people from Australia, because it was all but inspiring. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, news and views continues after this.